Welcome to Uncovered. I'm Anthony, he's Ron, and together we uncover the propaganda, the MAGA propaganda that is not covered by the corporate media, and we have lots to get through. Of course, we're going to respond to the debate last night, that vice presidential debate between Tim Walz and J.D. Vance. We have a lot to say about that. But first, Ron, we have a little breaking news, don't we? Maybe we should start with that. This is a big deal. This is Judge Tanya Chutkan has unsealed Jack Smith's 165-page redacted motion regarding presidential immunity. And you've been going through it the last 10 minutes that you've had it. How much have you managed to glean in that time?
Well, I speed read through the most important part, the first 75 pages or so, which is the statement of facts and evidence laid out, where it includes all the footnotes to say where each piece of evidence came from. And it's I would say there's not the guts of it we already knew, but there's a lot more detail that's plugged in that we did not know, in terms of laying out the case step by step. What he does is he starts out talking about how Trump knew afterwards that he did not win the race, and establishing all the different people who told him that, from campaign people, how he devised the scheme that he was going to challenge the election and try to overturn it regardless of what everyone was telling him the evidence was, how he directed his people to find things, how he was very much involved in orchestrating the fake elector scheme, and putting that together. And he was heavily involved in that, putting together the team of rogue lawyers from all different places outside of the campaign, outside of the White House, to establish that this was not a government operation. This was a Donald Trump operation to work around the immunity framework that was set out by the Supreme Court. He then went through the fact that Trump was made aware that all of the claims that were being made by Rudy and Sidney Powell and others in the court case were bogus, that he knew that a lot of these cases were nonsense. He was told this by numerous people, but he said he didn't care, and he was continuing to lie on social media to his followers about the evidence, even though he knew that a lot of it was false. Then Smith takes us through the run up to January 6th, the fake elector scheme, all the meetings in the White House that took place, who were there, the meeting in the Willard Hotel, who was there and what was said. We found out some more details about that in there. And then January 6th itself, a huge chunk of the brief deals with Mike Pence, who clearly is going to be the main witness here, and clearly was cooperating, clearly turned over all of his text messages and communication, because those were cited throughout the brief, to where there was a concerted, clear effort on the part of Trump to pressure him over and over again, to get surrogates to pressure Pence. None of those pressure campaigns worked, and that's basically how it ends up with the events that took place on January 6th. How he continued to lie to his followers and incite them over and over again. So, basically, just a lot more detail, really laid out the timeline step by step, day by day, how it all played out, and showed the complete deception of it.
I mean, this is huge, isn't it? Let's be clear. This is huge. And you're just reading the redacted document. So all the juicy stuff is still yet to be heard. The problem, though, is that, getting immunity from the Supreme Court comes with a huge machine behind it, doesn't it? So how is Jack Smith and how is Tanya Chutkan, in your opinion, going to navigate this? Are they effectively saying that by claiming that this is a all done with Donald Trump as an individual, not in a presidential position, that's basically the get out of jail card for them, is it?
Yeah, again, a lot of this stuff is not going to be litigated or decided for like a year. I mean,
Right.
Some of these things will be decided by Judge Chutkan maybe in the spring, because Trump has a chance to respond to all of this stuff. So as far as all that goes, I mean, we can talk about that in March, as far as like whether this stuff is going to meet the Supreme Court's test. But the key here, and I think what Jack Smith wanted, and I think what Judge Chutkan wanted, is for the American people to at least know as much of the facts as they can possibly know prior to the election. Now, people are not going to sit down and read this 175-page brief or whatever it is. The average person is not going to do that. So it really is up to people like us and mainstream media and others to accurately convey what is in here to the swing voters who maybe were not paying attention to the J6 hearings a couple of years ago, but are paying attention right now to what's going on. And even though J.D. Vance said last night, he doesn't want to talk about the past, and even though a lot of the Republican campaign operatives are saying, oh, American voters don't care about this, they only care about the price of bacon, I think that after having read through a lot of this stuff, I think that a lot of these voters are going to care.
Yes, I agree with that. Would you allow me? I'm going to allow you to turn a couple of lights on because it seems to be getting darker and darker. And in the meantime, I just want to read just the first paragraph from this redacted document. It starts with: the defendant asserts that he is immune from prosecution for his criminal scheme to overturn the 2020 presidential election because he claims it entailed official conduct. Not so, says Jack Smith. Although the defendant was the incumbent president during the charged conspiracies, his scheme was fundamentally a private one. Working with a team of private co-conspirators, the defendant acted as a candidate when he pursued multiple criminal means to disrupt, through fraud and deceit, the government function by which votes are collected and counted, a function in which the defendant, as president, had no official role. So that really, that's as far as I got of the of the reading, because it just literally dropped before we started. But that paragraph just shocked me. I was like, whoa, he is pulling no punches here. He really is being absolutely clear that this whole scheme was a criminal scheme masterminded by Donald Trump and his inner circle.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking forward to being able to go back and, sorry, I'm just adjusting the lighting because I didn't have a chance to do that before because I was reading the brief. I mean, I'm looking forward to getting a chance to go back and go through it in more detail, because I only saw a handful of things that were new that I didn't already know. But I know that there's a lot more in there. The most interesting thing to me are the footnotes, because footnotes tell you, because in the guts of the brief for non-lawyers, he's just laying out the facts. This is what happened. This is what happened. But then he's having footnotes that tell us how he knows each thing. Who told him this, whether it was a text message, whether it was a proffer, whether it was a page out of Mike Pence's book, which was cited extensively, his memoir about this. Those are the things that are most interesting to me, to kind of know where did Jack Smith come up with this stuff. But unfortunately, a lot of those footnotes are blacked out. You can't see those things.
Yeah. Well, how do you think, just finally on this, how do you think that the timing of this coming out today is going to upend the election? Because we are, how many days now? 36 or 38 days? I've almost lost count, but we are just over a month away from voting day. Well, it's the 2nd of October, so 5th of November. We're pretty close, right? How is this going to change things in these last 3 or 4 weeks?
As I was reading this brief, that's exactly what popped into my head. Is I know what the Trump reaction to this is going to be, and right wingers, and they're going to connect it up with the debate, because the narrative that they've been pushing all morning is, oh, Vance won the debate big, and he dominated, which is not the case at all. But that's the narrative that they've been pushing all day. And what they're going to say, for sure, I can almost guarantee it. I haven't looked yet, but I can guarantee it. They're going to say that the timing of this is suspicious, that Judge Chutkan unsealed this the day after the debate to try and take the momentum away from them. So we're going to be hearing a lot of that in the next 24 hours. The right-wing conspiracies that Chutkan unsealed this right after the VP debate, which is, of course, nonsense. Of course, this was coming any day now. We all knew this was about to drop any time now. So that's number one, is, is this obviously this is going to take the VP debate off the front page of the news cycle. Whether it will do that on right-wing media remains to be seen. But I think that it's really, really important for all of us reporters, everybody in media, to dig into this, pull out the nuggets, the explosive things that we maybe didn't know before, which are in the detail. Devils are in the details, and to get those out to the voters, and for Harris to put together ads possibly with even some of this stuff. I have heard different theories that, voters don't care about what happened on January 6th or the 2020 election. And I just refuse to believe that.
Yeah, I agree. I disagree.
They haven't been properly educated.
But I also think that ultimately, January 6th, the reversal of Roe, these are all major things. Trump being in court over Stormy Daniels, all of these things have come since the last time he ever won anything. And I just want to kind of put people's minds at rest that he last won something in 2016. 2020 he lost. That's what this particular case is about, him trying to overturn this or that result. He undoubtedly has a plan to rig this election, and we're starting to kind of get our heads around it. We're hoping that in these legislatures, people are on top of it. Again, it's probably going to be something like his people not wanting to certify the election to try and delay the election count. But ultimately, he doesn't stand a chance, considering, in my opinion, these major events, including January 6th, that have happened since 2020. And
there's one other,
it's significant.
There's one other interesting thing about the way Jack Smith structured this brief, which is he broke down the lead up to January 6th state by state. In other words, he put this is what happened in Arizona. This is what happened in Georgia. This is what happened in Pennsylvania. This is what happened in Michigan, step by step in each individual state. I think that's very important because, lo and behold, the exact same states that we're battling over right now in this election are the same ones that are part of this case where he was trying to overturn the results. So what I'm hoping is that local news stations and local media in those states, in Arizona, Pennsylvania, will focus in on the sections of, if they don't want to report on the whole thing, the whole 180 pages, report on the 2 pages that just dealt with their state and at least get that information to their voters.
I also wanted to mention that Midas Touch made a video a couple of years ago called A Coup in Plain Sight, which is a kind of 5-minute video that details the January 6th coup that ended up with the riot at the US Capitol. And after this, I recommend people go take a look at it. Just search for it on the Midas Touch YouTube channel, because if you've forgotten the whole plan, including the Willard Hotel, the timeline of events, when it's all put together, as this rather brilliant video that Brett put together shows, you'll see how his plan to overturn the election was very detailed. It wasn't random. The last-ditch attempt was the riot. That was him running out of options. Mike Pence had dropped the ball, so it was like, okay, let's send in the mob. And I think it's important that people are reminded of the timeline from when they started sowing the seeds of doubt regarding the election being fraudulent, which of course it wasn't. Let's talk about last night's debate. Maybe we should start with this Harris campaign ad that they've put together very quickly on the key moments of the VP debate, with J.D. Vance refusing to admit that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election. It kind of all starts and ends here, doesn't it? Here it is.
It's really rich for Democratic leaders to say that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power.
He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future.
That is a damning non-answer. America, I think you've got a really clear choice of who's going to honor that democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump.
And that's why I say it kind of starts and ends here, right? Because if the vice presidential candidate and the presidential candidate for the Republican side cannot acknowledge that they lost in 2020, even now, post 62 court cases, and of course these new cases, with a special counsel. I mean, how people can vote for that, apart from those die-hard, hat-wearing MAGA rally people, I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm really surprised that, given all this time that Vance and the Trump campaign had to prepare for this question, which they had to know was coming. I mean, the same question was asked of Donald Trump, basically, which is, did you win the 2020 election? And they asked Vance that question, and they asked him if he would have certified. I mean, the best they came up with in all of this time, all these months, was, I'm focused on the future.
Right.
I mean, really, that's the best you can come. I mean,
Yeah.
It seems like I could spend 10 minutes, if I was so inclined, crafting a better spin answer than that for one of my clients, as a former criminal defense lawyer, than the Trump campaign came up with for Vance. Vance spent the first 2 weeks after Walz was nominated talking about his military record, talking about Walz's 20 years ago, whatever he did or didn't do in Afghanistan. And now they're talking about Tiananmen Square and whatever he did in 1989 in China. All they want to do is talk about Tim Walz's past. But when you ask him, did Donald Trump win the 2020 election? He says, I don't want to talk about the past. Well, that's pretty relevant, because there's only a few things the vice president has the authority to do under the Constitution: break ties in the Senate, become president if the president dies, and certify the next election and count the electoral ballots. This is one of those three big duties, and
Yeah.
he won't answer how he'll do it.
It's important that the Democrats take these moments from last night's debate, such as this, where Tim Walz was on top of that question and the reaction, and use it to circulate it. Because the problem I have with last night's debate is there were great moments from Tim Walz, but they were lost in a whole word salad lasting 90 minutes. There's a whole lot of words. There wasn't a lot of clarity and substance. And I already made a video that's on Midas Touch about my, I did a kind of full analysis of last night's debate, so I don't want to repeat that too much. But I recognize that it's a very hard job to do these TV debates, and Tim Walz is not a natural. However, J.D. Vance is, because A, he's a fake personality. He's not a real person. He's created this identity for himself. And fake personalities, they actually thrive in television studios. It's all because the environment is fake. And so it appeared, the takeaway as I saw it, and I know this isn't a popular opinion, but because J.D. Vance is, he's debating society at Yale, he's an intellectual who lies. And that's his problem. He has the ability to speak with clarity, but the whole thing is a performance. It's a show. Whereas Tim Walz is an authentic Minnesota governor who kept referring to corn and beans, which I thought was kind of interesting. Those were his points of reference. And I was like, oh, he'd been overtrained. He'd been put in a suit that was too well cut for him. I wanted to just see him in his own clothes, just being that kind of coach character that we saw at the DNC. And he wasn't afforded the opportunity to do that. What are your thoughts on how it played out?
Yeah. The knock on him always was in the past that he talks too fast and sometimes trips over his words or misspeaks when he starts talking fast. That
and doesn't finish a thought. That's the other thing. There was a few
he trails
things
off and goes into the next thing, right? When he speaks slowly, he does well. When he starts getting revved up and getting amped up, that's when he makes mistakes. And a lot of the old stuff that they're digging up about his military record and stuff, misstatements, are exactly that. I mean, they're exactly him, not intentionally or maliciously lying, but talking really fast, getting amped up and getting a date wrong or place wrong or whatever. And, there were several instances of that. Like he said, I've become friends with school shooters. Obviously that was a mistake. He meant to say parents of school shooting victims. He's become friends with a lot of the Sandy Hook parents and the Parkland parents, David Hogg, etc. that's what he meant to say, but he's trying to talk too fast and he's trying to get to his next point. I agree with your take on Minnesota. I mean, this was a situation where he's a governor of a Midwestern state. One of the things he needed to do was let the American people know that he understands national issues, not just what's happening in Minnesota. Unfortunately, he continued to constantly revert back every question to an example in Minnesota, which is not really what you should be doing as a governor. You should use some examples, but not do it constantly. With all that said, though, history has shown vice presidential debates mean almost nothing. I mean, you could have one candidate dominate the debate and one candidate be absolutely wretched, and it really, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't make a huge difference. The best example of that would be Lloyd Benson and Dan Quayle in 1988, where, Benson destroyed Dan Quayle in that debate. You're no Jack Kennedy, all that. It didn't matter. They got blown out, So, did this move the needle one way or the other? It really didn't. Their likability, their favorabilities, I think both went up basically the same amount. But did it affect the polls? I don't think it's going to affect the polls at all. Yeah, you can see there, like, Wallace's favorability went up 13, Vance's went up 11, and there you have it.
Yeah,
Big
this is
deal.
a MSNBC poll, post-debate favorability poll.
Nobody votes for vice president. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, exactly. And then CNN did a snap poll. Before the debate, it was showing, what's the question? Was qualified to serve as president if necessary. Before the debate, 62% thought he would be, and after the debate, 65%. So he's managed to find 3 extra points somehow during that debate. I mean, look, as you say, it's not important. The thing that was most worrying for me, Ron, is that J.D. Vance, we know because we've exposed him, is a far-right Christian nationalist operative who wrote the foreword to the Project 2025 author's book, who is, talks about childless cat ladies. He wants, a blanket abortion ban. He believes women should be at home cooking and cleaning and not working. He has these kind of very weird Handmaid's Tale style views, and yet he presented last night as a moderate.
Yeah, none of that came out.
And
part of that is
go on.
Part of that is because Walz helped him do that. Because Walz continued to agree with him on things.
I know.
Every
time Walz was like, I agree with you. I was like, don't agree with this guy.
I think we can find common ground on this. I'm like, do you know who you're dealing with right now? You're not dealing with anyone who wants to find common ground with you. He's acting like he's this is one of his Senate colleagues, and they're trying to put a bill together and compromise on it. That's not the game.
This is terrible advice. I mean, he must have been given this advice. Yeah, I heard a rumor that some debate prep might have been done by Pete Buttigieg or something. I mean, were there people, because clearly he'd been given some media training, clearly he'd been done some rehearsal, and clearly, as with Joe Biden in the first debate with Donald Trump, he was over prepped.
Yes,
and my view, because I used to train politicians for these debates, is that if you have a candidate who is charismatic, somebody who already has people skills and is an intelligent, capable presenter, don't overtrain them. The people that need training are the people that are just useless in that environment, like classic civil servants who are not in show business. But Tim Walz has natural charisma. He doesn't need to be put into a box. And I think the reason that people liked him when Kamala Harris first chose him is because he's a real, authentic Midwestern. And that is very powerful in itself.
Yeah, I thought that about 7 minutes into the debate. What I thought was, in the Biden debate, I thought they just filled his head with too many facts and figures and flow charts and data. Yeah. And he just couldn't spit it out. It was just too much. And then they corrected that mistake with Kamala Harris, because Kamala Harris, that's not her personality. She is very similar to Walz in terms of being able to articulate vision and positive energy and broader themes, along with some specific policy proposals. But she's not like a bullet point flow chart type debater like a Vance is, right? And for that matter, Donald Trump isn't either. But he doesn't have any skills, debate skills, in my view, other than insults. That's his skill. That's his skill set, is to hurl insults, which doesn't really appeal to many people. But it became obvious to me like 7-8 minutes in, because I thought, oh, they're going to follow the same playbook they did with Harris's prep that they did for Walz, because they're similar styles, and that's going to be great. But I figured out a few minutes in, no, they did a Joe Biden style prep and hammered him with so many facts and figures. And to a guy who struggles with talking too fast, you could tell he's trying to spit out all the talking points within the time allowed. And that's not really what you want from a guy like Walz. So yeah, I thought it was not and that, I think that also contributed to his nervousness at the beginning.
Yes.
Because instead of just being himself, he's trying to play a role and read off memorized talking points. And that's no fun for anybody under that kind of pressure.
It's so difficult. I really need to remind people how hard it is. It's hard enough to make a speech at a wedding, right?
Yeah.
Where you're not really limited by time, but and with everyone looking at you, but to actually go into a TV studio, which is a fully illuminated set, it's a very weird, it's like walking on Mars, the weirdest environment, and to have to deliver to time, to 1 minute or 2 minutes, to take it all in and to react is very difficult when your head is full of the tutorial that you've been given. So I think, as you say, they kind of overcooked the training. But what I probably would have done is focused on the threat to democracy. And I didn't really hear any of that, because the guy standing next to him is a threat to democracy. And, something we should probably talk about, and people write to me about, is the fact that if Donald Trump was to win this election and something happened to him, you're going to end up with J.D. Vance as the president of the United States. Somebody who is, Peter Thiel probably had this planned all along. And there are conspiracy theories suggesting exactly that. Trump is a useful idiot to get J.D. Vance into the top spot, who will do exactly what it is that this far-right Christian nationalist movement want.
Yeah. There's plenty of theory. I mean, that was the whole reason why right-wingers did not want him to pick Nikki Haley, was because they thought that the deep state establishment was going to push out Trump to get Nikki Haley in, which is who they wanted all along, right? So the idea was, well, we'll take J.D. Vance because he won't do that. He'll be loyal to Trump. Well, his track record doesn't really show that. But, it was also interesting. By the way, before I get to that, to me, I thought the three best points in the debate for Walz and for the Harris campaign were, I thought Vance's answer on school shootings and guns was terrible.
Yeah.
I thought his answer on the 2020 election and certifying was terrible. And I thought his answer on abortion was terrible. And those are three pretty big things that, when you get past all the style, the substance of those three things was pretty bad for Vance, in my opinion. But the last thing I'll say is, the people who are crowing this morning was Donald Trump Jr. and who was the other one? I forgot. The two people who pushed Vance the most on Trump were Donald Trump Jr. and one other, Charlie Kirk. They were the ones who were in Trump's ear. You got to take Vance. You got to take Vance. And when Vance had such a terrible first month, everybody was beating up on those guys on the right and all over the place, saying, you forced this idiot Vance on Trump. This was such a terrible move. And now they're all crowing, saying that they were vindicated, which is really dumb, because nothing Vance did last night is going to make up for all of the other horrible stuff that's already on record.
Well, he was trying to appeal to the women that he's insulted over the last few months, right? I think that's really what he was doing. He was trying to present himself as someone that women, might change their mind about.
Yep.
Do you think he was successful in that?
Yeah, I noticed that too. I thought that the whole strategy there was likability. That was the whole thing, was for him to come across as, in other words, there was two ways they could have played this. He could have came in hot You know, they have the hot debate strategy and the cold debate strategy. All the people who prep for these things will tell you the same thing, right? So their campaign clearly made the choice. And by the way, Donald Trump always comes in hot, right? They made the choice
all he knows.
that would be a mistake, because already people thought Vance was a dick. Vance was a jerk, especially women. And if he came in and went after nice guy Midwestern Walz, that would have blew up in their face, I think. So they figured that the problem with Vance is the opposite, and they've got to have him come across as a nice guy, as reasonable, mild-mannered, and to not really go after Walz personally or not go after him too hard. And I think that clearly was the strategy. Whether it changed many people's minds about the fact that Vance is a jerk, I don't think so. I think what I saw is like 1%, you know, like 1-2% thought, you know, he was a better guy than they.
This debate might as well not have happened, and it wouldn't have changed anything at all.
But it doesn't matter. Who cares? You're not voting for Vance. You're voting for Trump or Harris.
You're actually voting. You're voting for a mindset. You know, I think that my new thing is that I like to say, let me give you one good reason to vote for Kamala Harris. She's not Donald Trump. And this concept of a mindset, you are choosing democracy versus dictatorship. And I do wish, you know, the US elections always bring it down to personality. And this happens a lot now all over the world with the rise of populism. But ultimately, you're voting for a movement, for a concept, and liberalism and progressiveness and inclusivity and diversity and human rights and civil rights and women's rights. Like, that's what you're voting for in Kamala Harris.
Can I say one more thing that frustrates me from both Democrats and the media? That whenever these people like Vance or Trump say, they're always answer to 2020 and to January 6th is, but he did leave. You know, he left peacefully. He did go for a peaceful transition of power. He got on the plane and left. Wait a minute. My answer, and I always wonder, like, why doesn't anyone with the media or Walz or anybody respond to that by saying, what choice did he have? What exactly was he going to do? Direct the military to keep Joe Biden out of D.C.? Milley was the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He wasn't going to do that. They were already making contingency plans in case Trump tried to do that. He had absolutely no choice. He did everything that he possibly could do, including organize a violent rebellion to stay in the White House, and only left when everything failed and he had no other choice. But I don't ever hear any Democrats or anyone in the media making that point.
I think the reason is a word that we started using last week, and that is sane washing. Is that we are, you know, the Democrats are as guilty of this sometimes as the media are, where they try and normalize the actions of Donald Trump and sane wash what he says and his behavior to make it palatable to fit the narrative of a two-horse race. And I think Democrats are always like, you know, we want the race to appear fair. We want the race to seem normal. We don't want it to, because they believe so much in fairness and in the system, because so many of them are institutionalized into the system here. But as you say, the mere fact that he refused the peaceful transfer of power should be enough to base your entire campaign on that the last guy refused to leave. And they don't make enough use of it. It's so poignant. It's so relevant to the type of leadership we want in America.
In a normal country, in a normal era in this country, that would be disqualifying. That 20 years ago,
100%,
30 years ago, it would be. But this country, because of Donald Trump, has gotten a very significant chunk of their population that has just gone down a very dark road.
Yeah.
You know,
they allowed Trump to change the rules.
Conspiracies.
Right. Let's stay on this sane washing subject just for a second, because CNN, we mentioned last week, were at it, and they seem to be at it again. This is a correspondent saying that Trump is taking Hurricane Helene seriously and is offering a message of unity. Check out this grade 10 sane washing.
He is clearly taking this seriously as a politician, is on the ground trying to show that he is there in support of the people on the ground in Georgia. And of course, this comes as while he is, again, offering a message of unity. He has spent the last several days slamming Kamala Harris, his rival, for not being on the ground, for not helping with this storm. And I do want to point out,
Kristen Holmes is lying. She's
the
outright
same one.
lying.
The same one as last week.
That's right.
She sounds absolutely no different than a Newsmax, Fox News, or RSBN on the scene reporter. She or Alina Habba. That could be just as well be coming from Alina Habba, that report. It's exactly what a Trump campaign spokesperson would say, but she is CNN's national correspondent covering this election. I mean, what she just said there is just insane. I mean, this was a photo op. Trump brought nothing in there. It was a scam. It is a scam he has pulled time and time again at one tragedy after another, which we've documented, one disaster after another. He goes in, he throws food, he takes credit for other people's work, he causes chaos, and he leaves. He does nothing to help anyone. And so for her to like characterize him doing this again, he's showing serious concern and he really cares. And the Harris administration, just pumping out their spin. It's not a reporter's job to report the spin, to use the campaign spin as your report. I mean, that's just crazy, but that is what they're doing. This was the criticism of Maggie Haberman at the New York Times, was that she reported their spin. At least, though, some of the time she would go the other way. She didn't do it always, but she was criticized for doing it some. And this is the price many reporters are willing to pay for access. They want the access. They want these insiders to talk to them. And so they will put out their spin to maintain that access. And that really is a big problem with journalism today.
I did a little bit of digging on this journalist to see. I just looked at her Twitter feed just to see what kind of things she was posting, to see if there was a theme with Donald Trump. And actually, it seemed to be pretty progressive in her posts. So then I was thinking, well, is she maybe just nervous when she's doing these reports and doesn't really know what to say, and so just tries to, a lot of kind of rookie reporters, they impersonate an experienced reporter. So they say words like unity to give the impression that, that they're reporting in an official manner. I couldn't work it out. And then, the a little bird on my shoulder saying, she's an operative. She's just a Donald Trump operative. So where do you think it falls? Because, I can't quite get my head around why you would be so outrageously biased. Is it just access, or is there something else at play?
That's a good question, because I don't know anything about her. I didn't go back and do what you did. I didn't really look at that. But it could be just an access thing because, or it could be that you have become friends with somebody inside the campaign. And of course, we had the reporter become intimate friends with RFK, which obviously biased her reporting. When you now know that and go back and look at it, you clearly see. So there's who knows? I mean, it could be that she is a right winger. We've seen several reporters over the years that have been fired or let go by mainstream outlets who resurface again on Newsmax or Fox or whatever, or some right-wing channel as their correspondent. And she may end up doing that someday too. Or it could be just like you said, I don't know. She's just not very good at what she's trying to do here.
Okay, let's take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk about, as you said, Donald Trump, another one of these stunts, this time throwing out boxes of chicken fingers at people during a game in Alabama. We'll do that next here on Uncovered. Have you had difficulty focusing lately? Things like parenting pressures, work challenges, school commitments, or just personal drama can all wreak havoc on your ability to stay focused and productive. Well, if this sounds like you, I know something that could make a real difference. Calm. Calm is the #1 app for sleep and meditation, giving you the power to calm your mind and change your life. Calm knows that everyone faces unique challenges in their daily lives, and mental health isn't about a one-size-fits-all solution. That's why Calm offers a wide range of content to help you navigate life's ups and downs, with meditations to help you work through anxiety and stress, boost your focus, build healthier habits, and take better care of your physical well-being. Expert-led talks designed to help you handle grief, improve self-esteem, care of relationships, and much more. Calm puts the tools you need right in your pocket and can help you dedicate just a few minutes each day to live a happier, healthier life. Stress less, sleep more, and live better with Calm. For listeners of our show, Calm is offering an exclusive 40% off a Calm premium subscription at calm.com/uncovered. Go to calm.com/uncovered for 40% off unlimited access to Calm's entire library. That's calm.com/uncovered. And we're back, and you can find links to our sponsors in the description below. Okay, Ron, more Donald Trump stunts. This time it's chicken fingers. What is it with this guy? Like, this guy has got so much money. His obsession with fast food is remarkable. Do you remember that time? Who was it? Wasn't it a soccer team or someone that he invited to the White House? And they thought they were going to come and get a delicious 5-course meal, and he just bought McDonald's for everybody. Do you remember that thing that happened during his presidency?
He does it all the time. He has McDonald's on his plane. He'll have parties that he'll serve McDonald's. I remember at CPAC, they had he had his VIP room where people paid like $5,000 to get into this ballroom, and they walked in and there was McDonald's stacked up on the wall, burgers and fries. And look, if I'm not a McDonald's aficionado, but I've certainly eaten there when I'm desperate and there's nowhere else to eat on the road or something. And that food is not very good after like 5 minutes after it's been sitting. The fries aren't very good. The burger. Yeah. Keep in mind, these people are eating this stuff like an hour. This stuff's been delivered like an hour before.
I know, it's grim.
Imagine eating like hour or 2 hour old lukewarm cold McDonald's.
Yeah.
That's what he's basically serving up. But this move that Jason Miller and Steve Chung have come up with a couple of years ago, it was during the primary, of this routine of having Trump show up before these rally appearances at these diners and fast food restaurants and hand out food, which they've now done at every single event, everywhere he goes. They go to pizza joints, fast food joints. Miami, they did Cuban sandwiches. They did sausages on a stick at the Iowa Fair. This is their move. And I guess I just don't really understand. Like, they believe that this shows Trump to be a man of the people. This is what they believe, that he goes in there in his uniform, his red tie and his ill-fitting suit and his caked on makeup and his hairdo, and walks in and they have, staged food sitting there, and he just starts handing it out. And what we've seen in a particular situation like this is he's throwing boxes of chicken fingers into a crowd at a football game. I mean, we saw last week, they have him go into a grocery store and he's in a grocery store. What is he going to do? Start grabbing things off the shelf to throw to people? He threw $100 bill at a lady.
That's right.
Saw last
he
week,
he wouldn't even touch her. And this is the
I
thing.
I don't understand this at all. I don't get it.
I was thinking that maybe it's because he needs to eat, right? So when he's en route to these events, he's got to eat, and he's only going to want to eat at a McDonald's or a Chick-fil-A or these types of places. So they're like, well, I'll tell you what, we'll stop off, we'll get your food, sir. And while we're there, you can throw some chicken fingers at a few regular members of the public. Let's take a look. I mean, it's so weird. Why couldn't he walk to the line and hand someone some chicken fingers? Like, can you imagine those poor chicken fingers inside that box? Ah! I wouldn't want to eat that food after. Can you imagine opening the box and what it looks like? It looks like it passed through the digestive system of a cat.
I just don't understand what the point of this is. They're trying to make him show that he is a generous, common man who loves the people. So he shows up at places where food is staged and throws it at them, and in a suit and makeup. And this is supposed to make him look like a good guy. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not getting the whole vibe. Like, and this is their whole game plan. They don't do anything else. This is what they do every single day when he goes somewhere. This is the move. They do this, and he gives the rally speech, and he goes home. I don't understand the campaign at all.
But here's the thing about it. It's like if he was giving away something of value, you might be like, okay, well, that's kind of generous. But he's giving away stuff that costs $2, $3, $4. I mean,
And
this
it's
is
cold.
Yeah, cold food at that. I cannot see how. I mean, I can when I think of it as a cult, and when I think of it as the power of celebrity, and the idea of receiving some rotten chicken fingers that have been touched by the hands of Trump. Maybe they think that they taste better, or maybe they feel like it's like some divine intervention. If they eat the Trump chicken finger, then maybe they'll never get sick. I don't know. There's something going on though.
Yeah, it's I like I said, I don't understand. I don't understand what message they're trying to convey. I mean, I hear what they say, because when they put these, they're obviously, all these clips that you see are his campaign people filming them.
Yes.
So obviously this is all an orchestrated plan, and they make sure that they have some cheering fans there for him. But as far as like taking these clips and having this up, and they always caption the clips, he's a true man of the people. This is what they say. Like, I just don't understand who's going to like look at that. It's not like he's in like a t-shirt or, sleeves rolled up and some jeans. He's there in this monkey suit
in his clown
with his
costume.
makeup.
Yeah. I love it that you keep talking about the makeup. Maybe we should make more of the makeup.
He's at his makeup at a football game in a suit.
But
throwing chicken fingers.
It's the same conversation that I, as a European, never understand when I heard it used in the kind of political discourse in America, and that is they never went to the southern border. They never went there. Donald Trump's been there so many times. J.D. Vance just got back from the southern border. We heard it in the debate last night. And it's like, it's so weird. Like, it doesn't mean anything.
It's
like
symbolism.
Going and standing next to that wall doesn't change anything to do with policy or your experience of it. It's irrelevant, and yet it is used time and time again as political collateral.
Yeah, it's all about all the flags, the music. It's all about the symbolism for the Trump campaign. Always.
The visual.
The uniform, the makeup, the flags, the music, the fast food, all scripted, certain people's stage set up behind him, the Blacks for Trump and all that. It's all theater. It's all staged. The same thing with these disasters. You fly into East Palestine, you hand out a couple of bottles of Trump water, you tell everyone to have a good time, and then you spend the next week like berating Pete Buttigieg for not going there. I went there, you didn't. Well, meanwhile, he's like actually working behind the scenes to get things done and help people. He's not just parachuting in and parachuting out and making it all about him. But that's the whole Trump governing style. That's what he's all about, and that's what their campaign is all about.
Who else was big into that from history? Showing up, creating a rally, the uniform, the everything the same every time. Having these kind of routines. Ah, yes, the former Nazi leader of Germany, Adolf Hitler.
Mussolini too.
Mussolini too.
Let's not forget him. Some people say that, we always compare him to Hitler, but some people say he's more like Mussolini than Hitler, and I kind of buy into a lot of that. Yeah.
Well, Stalin also. I mean, we could run the list of dictators if we want to, and That's why Trump was very keen on the idea of these military parades.
Same
he really
deal.
sees this
Yep.
role, playing this role as a figurehead,
Yep.
but he doesn't actually want to do the job.
Oh,
Very
no.
happy to throw out the chicken fingers, but actually sitting down and doing any reading, whether it be a presidential daily briefing or security documents, or, he's like, do you remember that time he said, look, if I needed to read, if there was something important, they would have told me. He said that when he was president, about not reading his daily briefings. If there's something important, they would have told me.
There are two types of people that go into politics.
Yeah.
There are people who want to be somebody. They want to be a congressman. They want to be a senator. They want to be a governor because they love everything that comes with it. The adulation, the fame, the money, all that stuff. Having people call you sir and kiss your ass and all that. They want to be somebody. That's why they get into politics. It's a way that just an average low talent person can become famous and powerful,
get some status, yeah,
and influential, right? But so there's those people. They just want to be that person. And then there's people who actually want to do something. They want to help people. And those are the people that you rarely ever hear from. They're not the people that are on the Sunday shows. They're not the people on MSNBC and Fox. They're just grinding every single day, writing bills, doing constituent services, helping people. And the really, really good ones are the ones who combine those two things. The ones who are able to have the out front, like an Obama, have the out front pace and the charisma and paint broad brushstrokes of policy, but also are able and motivate people, but also able to get your hands dirty and get your fingers in there and
do the work,
and make the sausage.
You got to do the work. There's no excuse for not doing the work. Let's show this clip of Donald Trump lying about bringing supplies to people in the hit by this hurricane. I mean, maybe you can set this up for us because, again, you touched on it a moment ago, but he's going to keep playing this game, isn't he?
This is the same thing he did in East Palestine, where the train derailment, where he went up there and he acted like he was delivering all this stuff, and we find out it was all delivered by Goya Foods. That's who they were, delivered like cans of beans and various different things. None of it was delivered by Trump. The only thing Trump delivered was like a pallet of water. So he'll bring
out
like
of date. Do you remember?
He'll bring like
water.
one thing, and then he'll say, "Look at all this stuff that I brought." Right.
Yeah.
Same playbook here. He brought nothing to North Carolina, nothing. Okay. He showed up, and who was there? Samaritan's Purse, which is, Franklin Graham's charity that he runs, that his church runs, that goes into every natural disaster. They do this all the time. They have tons of money that they raise through their church, and they provide relief. How much actual tangible stuff? I mean, it probably is effective. I don't know. But the point is, they go to every disaster site and do the same thing. So whether Trump is involved in this or not, Samaritan's Purse, people are going to be there. They're going to be handing out their stuff, and Franklin Graham's going to be there. Whatever you think of Franklin Graham, this is one of the things that he does. That's probably a good positive thing. So Trump just shows up and says, "Oh, well, Franklin Graham is a supporter of mine, so I'm just going to say that everything he brought here was because of me. I'm the one who brought all this stuff." He brought nothing. This is him just completely lying through his teeth as usual.
And we should also point out, he doesn't care. He doesn't care about anybody. It's just not in his list of two emotions. Let's take a look.
And we came down with truckloads of things, and we're going to have that done by Franklin's incredible organization. They've done such a good job. We've done this before, but we have a lot of truckloads of different items, from oil to water to all sorts of equipment that's going to help them.
Yeah, he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Who's we?
Yeah.
So we brought all this stuff. He didn't bring anything. This is Franklin Graham's charity that brought this stuff. So again, his campaign got pinned down on it the next day What exactly did you guys bring? Nothing. They brought nothing. What their excuse was, they helped to coordinate bringing this stuff in. They helped. So it changed from Trump saying, we brought this stuff, I brought this stuff, to the campaign cleaning it up, saying, okay, conceding, okay, well, we didn't bring anything, but we were helping to coordinate.
I have a few clips of Donald Trump from the rally where this most recent rally, he came out with some stuff. I actually couldn't watch it. I was like, this is doing my head in. He's unraveling. And I'm sure that, the polls have a huge amount to do with this, the effect on his psyche. And we've predicted that he will be ramping up the authoritarianism. But the abuse and the aggression, referring to Kamala Harris as being mentally ill. Talk about projection. I mean, this has now got to a point where if there was such a thing as an authority, maybe if you had a king or a queen, somebody who sat above, would probably be like, you can't run. You cannot say this stuff. It is socially unacceptable. It's going to cause chaos. You're encouraging people with this hate speech. You're inciting violence. And yet, the gloves are off as far as he's concerned, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, I've watched every speech for years that he's given. And obviously I don't like Trump. I'm biased to some degree, but I try to be objective when I'm analyzing his performances. Here's what I can tell you. I mean, his performances this week were far worse than last week or last month. And last month was far worse than the month before that. I'm not exaggerating this. If you go back and watch Trump even from last year and compare him to now, he looks and sounds 10 times worse. As bad as he was before, he's much worse now, which is why I really say Operation Let Trump Speak. I want voters to hear and see him now, because they might remember Trump from when he was president, as bad as he was. But this is like a shell of that person. This is a much worse, more deranged, more senile and incompetent and mentally compromised person than even a year ago. And, it just seems like what's next week going to bring? Because each week brings some new insanity out of this man.
Let's take a look.
Out that the 950 is a misnomer because you can steal whatever you want. You can go way above. But you'd see, originally you saw kids walk in with calculators. They were calculating. They didn't want to go over the $950. They're standing with calculators, adding it up. These are smart people. They're not so stupid, but they have to be taught. Now, if you had one really violent day, like a guy like Mike Kelly, put him in charge, Congressman Kelly, put him in charge for one day. Mike, would you say, he's right here, he's a great congressman. Would you say, Mike, that if you were in charge, you would say, oh, please, don't touch them, let them rob your store. All these stores go out of business, right? They don't pay rent, then the city doesn't have money. It's a chain of events that's so bad. One rough hour, and I mean real rough, the word will get out and it will end immediately. It'll end immediately.
I mean, what is that?
And if you pay attention, go back and watch again, look at the people behind him.
Yeah.
They're not even listening to him anymore. Even his own rabid supporters who have been staged behind him, which are supposed to be the most enthusiastic, are the ones behind him. None of them are even listening. They're looking down because, number one, they can't relate. They have no idea what he's talking about half the time. They can't relate to anything. He's talking about shoplifters saying, and this is the first part is a part that he's told before, but the second part is the new deranged part that's worse than what he said last week. I mean, the original deranged part is him saying, if you go in and shoplift anything, if you steal anything under $1,000 in California, nothing will happen to you. You won't be prosecuted, which is not true, but this is what he claims. So that's what he's talking about, that kids are going in to steal stuff at stores and bringing calculators with them. First of all, most kids don't even know what a calculator is. They've never heard of it, right? Nobody uses calculators anymore. They have their phone thing. But that they're going in and they're adding up stuff that they're stealing, and when they get to 950, they stop stealing, and then they walk out. This is what he's claiming, right? So he takes that story, which is bizarre in and of itself, and then he adds to it what we should have is a 24-hour beatdown day, where basically everyone in America is allowed to beat the hell out of shoplifters if they see them, and then that will stop all shoplifting in America. If we just do one day a year where everyone's allowed to beat the hell out of a shoplifter, that will end shoplifting. That's Trump's new solution.
I mean, it's not much better than his economic plan, Ron. Let's hear Donald Trump on climate change. This is a good one.
Because global warming wasn't working, because the planet's actually gotten a little bit cooler recently. But climate change covers everything. It can rain, it can be dry, it can be hot, it can be cold. Climate change, everything is. Look, and I believe I really am an environmentalist. I've gotten environmental awards, but I want clean, beautiful air and clean, beautiful water. That's all, crystal clean water.
Yeah. I mean, he's been saying clean air and clean water for years, and unfortunately, the Democrats use those phrases as well, and I don't appreciate it, because climate change has nothing to do with clean air and clean water.
Nothing to do with it.
And so there is this, there really is this denial, not just of the facts and of the story, because, it's already happening. And to deny the fact that it's happening when it's already happening, you only have to look at this hurricane as an example. And yet, none of even the weather presenters, they don't mention climate change. It's about time that we put it together. But because it's so politicized in this country, and I put it down to Al Gore being given this climate czar role, which I think politicized it in a way, as well as all the propaganda that we got from the oil companies and the those energy fossil fuel companies. I think that it's a tragedy, because the rest of the world does not think of climate change as political. And in Europe, countries are so far ahead with doing something about this.
Yeah. I mean, we could do multiple shows just on this subject, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have issues with both sides of it. I definitely have issues with, like you said, some of the people who have been some of the leading spokesmen for it, who own multiple private jets and homes. I have a problem, and yachts. I have a problem with that. I have a problem with, having climate change summits and having 35 yachts and 16 private jets fly to the summit. I have issues with some of those things.
Yeah,
but that shouldn't distract the fact that we have these imperfect celebrity messengers. Shouldn't distract us from the main point. I also have issues with the fact that anything we do on climate change has to include China, or else it's almost useless, because they're half the world's carbon emissions are the problem, and they have virtually no standards. So setting all of that aside, though, I mean, it's pretty obvious that we have many more natural disasters and much more severe storms and all of that wreaking havoc on our planet and on our country than we did 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. So he's asked right there a question about this. Do you believe that climate change is real and it is contributing to these storms that are devastating communities in Georgia and Nashville? And this is his cartoon character response.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of way he dealt with COVID. He's anti-science. He's dumb. And we can't put somebody this stupid in charge of the biggest economy in the world.
Well, he can't intellectualize it. And you hear that when he talks about it. He's like, well, sometimes it's warm, sometimes it's cold. They call it global warming, but now they've decided to call it climate change because it's not just warming. It's, he's describing global dimming, but he doesn't know what that is. So he has absolutely no understanding of the scientific aspect of it, because, as you say, the only thing he really understands in a very basic form is real estate, and he's not even very good at that. And he applies his kind of real estate thinking to everything, from climate change and how he handles natural disasters by, giving out out-of-date water. The man is an imbecile. And the fact that he's even allowed to run for president, I mean, I posted a tweet yesterday. I said, I can't believe he's even allowed on television, let alone to run for president.
Yeah. I mean, clean water, though. As long as we have clean water, they got, you know what? They got a lot of water in Asheville right now. You know that?
Yeah.
They so there you go. I don't really think that, conservationism or, pollution.
He gutted the EPA.
Really the solution.
He gutted the Environmental Protection Agency when he was president. Right?
Yeah.
He pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord. The guy, and now his drill baby drill is his subtitle for his election campaign.
And when FEMA was out of money, by the way, in 2021, after COVID and several hurricanes and natural disasters, and needed new funding, 35 Republican senators voted against funding FEMA in 2021. And so, but now those same senators like Rick Scott, Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley are up for re-election, and they all want a bunch of aid to go to their distressed communities.
But if Trump were to be re-elected, part of the cost saving would be taking it from these agencies that provide aid.
Oh, absolutely.
And so that is the serious side to this argument. Whether you believe that climate change is man-made or not, it's irrelevant. It's like we already saw him withholding aid from states. This was in COVID, right? With PPE, withholding stuff from states that didn't vote for him. I mean, that's who we're dealing with here.
And you know what the funny thing is? You got Elon Musk who's out there pushing this guy every day maniacally.
Yes.
And Musk tweeted this morning.
Yes.
He said, in a few years, there's not going to be any internal combustion cars. They're going to be like horses. Like they're going to be like the horse and buggy. They'll all be gone.
To history.
Nobody will own these. And it's just like the person that you're backing violently disagrees with what you're saying right now.
Maybe it's a good time to show this Musk tweet because he posted, we predicted that he'd be in the tank for Trump, but it's actually gone beyond that now. He posted, very few Americans realize that if Trump is not re-elected, this will be the last election. Far from being a threat to democracy, he is the only way to save it. Now, again, this is projection. This is a reversal of the narrative. This is what Trump does as well, reverse the narrative, turn Kamala Harris into the threat to democracy when she's anything but. And so Elon Musk, he does have an enormous following, both on Twitter and elsewhere. So this does matter when he does stuff like this.
There can't be anyone who agrees that is true. Like, think about this. If Kamala Harris wins this election, that is the end of American democracy. Like, there will not be another meaningful U.S. election again. It will be the end of the republic. There isn't any normal, sane person who believes that's true. Even Republicans don't believe that. Even some Trump supporters don't truly believe that. They might think, well, this is going to be the end of, the deficit's going to be exploded. Inflation's going to go back up. Gas prices will go back. They might think those things, but not even some of the cultists think that democracy is going to be ended by Kamala Harris. So for the richest man in the world, who's supposed to be a super genius, who owns all these companies and government contracts, to make a statement like this, it's just so completely asinine. And you have to ask yourself, because he's making these statements more often now, is he like so far down the ketamine rabbit hole that he's just drug addled out of his mind? I noticed last night he was tweeting at 4:24 a.m. all night long. He was tweeting about Trump. His last one was like 4:24, and then he was up again. He slept for like 2 hours, and then he was up again at 6:30, back at it. Or is he just knowingly lying and gaslighting?
Yeah. He's a supervillain. He's a supervillain in this comic strip, and this is Trump's the Joker with the makeup, this is how the story goes. This is Gotham City. I'm telling you. I mean, it never was a truer word. I genuinely worry because America has a kind of unique view that rich people are smart and successful.
Yeah.
And this is not reflected in other nations outside of the United States as much. Of course, some countries will have that. I'm sure in the Middle East there's a little bit of that and elsewhere. But from where I'm from, rich people are thought of as idiots, right? You don't equate wealth with being a good person or a kind person or a successful person or, most importantly, an intelligent person. And if you go back and look at all of Elon Musk's predictions, and he's like the king of predictions. He goes on these podcasts and they say, so, Elon, tell us, what's it going to be like in the future and all this stuff. This is over the last 20 years. Everything that Elon Musk has predicted has not come true.
That's true.
He is so wide of the mark. He just thinks he's Tony Stark. He has this very high opinion of himself. I agree that his kind of autistic view of his business interests helps him to develop things and not take no for an answer. But he didn't create Tesla. He bought it and kicked out the original owners. He is one of these people who likes to take the credit for other people's work. He's not smart. He is also a fake. He has new hair and he has a whole new look, and that's not who Elon Musk really is. And a little bit like J.D. Vance, these people are, it's very easy for them to say anything because they don't have morals.
Yeah. And they have enough money to where they consider themselves bigger than governments.
Right.
And more powerful than governments, and that they can ignore them, like we saw him try and do with Brazil. And,
yes.
He tried to ignore their courts and their laws until he started getting socked with massive fines and having his services shut off in that country. And then he backed down. But I think what he dreams of is the day when somebody like Donald Trump is the president and he has a dispute with Brazil, the U.S. government will get involved on his side.
Well, because he'll be working for the U.S. government. I mean, he has infiltrated NASA, right?
Yeah.
Just the number of these Starlink satellites is preventing you and I from seeing the night sky, Ron. He has literally changed the visual of our planet by nature of his business interests. And the fact that they now need him to go rescue astronauts from the International Space Station because Boeing have failed and, NASA has failed, it's down to a private individual. It shouldn't be like this. And now I heard him being interviewed about AI, and because of his opinion about trans, he doesn't believe that transgenderism is real because of his own experience with his own child. He's saying that AI is biased and is liberal and progressive because if you ask it about transgenderism, it gives you a factual answer or an opinionated answer. He thinks it's opinion. This is very dangerous for the richest man in the world to talk like this.
I think he's the most dangerous person in the world. I really do. Capable of, because, we're going to be done with Trump, hopefully, here very soon. And the menace that he has been and a cancer he has been on our country and the world, I think is coming to an end. The light is at the end of the tunnel for us. But Elon Musk, no. I mean, Elon Musk is somebody that we're going to have to deal with for a very long time.
Yeah. It's very worrying, isn't it? Let's. I want to kind of move on from Donald Trump, but I do have Donald Trump on Iran and the kind of latest news about, obviously what's been happening in Lebanon, but specifically he talks about troops back in 2020. Here he is.
Do you think Israel should retaliate to these missile attacks from Iran? But also, do you believe that you should have been tougher on Iran after they had launched ballistic missiles in 2020 on U.S. forces in Iraq, leaving more than 100 U.S. soldiers injured?
So, first of all, injured. What does injured mean? Injured means you mean because they had a headache, because the bombs never hit the fort. So just so you understand, there was nobody ever tougher in Iraq. They had no money with me. They would have made any deal with me. I would have had a deal made within, literally, I would have had a deal made within 1 week after the election. They were dying to make a deal. And when you say not tough, they had no money. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money for Hezbollah. And when we hit them, they hit us. And they called us. And they said, we're going to shoot at your fort, but we're not going to hit it. And if you were a truthful reporter, which you're not, you would tell the following: none of those very accurate missiles hit our fort. They all hit outside. And there was nobody hurt other than the sound. It was loud. And some people said that hurt, and I accept that.
I mean, I'm kind of distressed by the commercial for ivermectin that showed up on the screen during that. Are they still pushing ivermectin, which is a horse dewormer for COVID?
It's a major advertiser there on Right Side Broadcasting.
Incredible. So let's get into this, Ron.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, he said Iraq, he meant Iran.
Yep.
So another of one of many Trump gaffes that we get on a regular basis.
Iran, Iraq.
He also said that
it's all the same, isn't it?
He also said 2 days ago that Kim Jong-un was in charge of Iran. So
that's right.
Yeah, this is just, and media doesn't report all this stuff. It's like they ignore it. But we do. But the point for me is what he said about the service members that are injured. And this, again, it proves the Normandy stuff. It proves the Arlington stuff. It proves the suckers and losers. It's more corroboration.
Yeah.
When things happen to U.S. service members or to John McCain or whoever, and Trump cannot figure out how to turn it to his advantage or exploit it for his own benefit, he doesn't care about it. He's scumbag. So in this particular situation, over 100 missiles exploded near their base, and no, they weren't killed or blown up, but many of them suffered concussions and they suffered traumatic brain injuries. 34 of them were hospitalized with traumatic brain injuries. This is no joke. These are long-term injuries and disabilities that result. But it happened when Trump was president. Now, if that happened tomorrow, of course, Trump would be saying this is World War III starting, right? And this is the worst thing ever. But since it happened on his watch, he doesn't want to acknowledge it. He doesn't want to acknowledge that these people were injured. So he makes light of it and he says, oh, they just had headaches. Well, this is a guy who got a little nick on his ear and spent weeks wearing huge bandages and talking about himself as some kind of war hero. And yet at the same time, he's minimizing 34 service members who went to the hospital with brain injuries. Just despicable.
Yeah. I mean, we know he is the worst person on the planet. Like, you couldn't imagine a more terrible person. And tragically, getting cast on The Apprentice and then winning the presidency, I'm not sure which is worse, incidentally. Let's move on, only because we're running short on time, and there's a couple of kind of interesting stories to drop in. Now, do you remember that movie 2000 Mules that was created? Who was it that did it? Was it Dinesh D'Souza?
Dinesh D'Souza. Correct.
Yeah. This was a propaganda movie that was supposedly exposing the fraud that went on in the 2020 election and the stuffing of ballots and, various things. Obviously, the whole thing is garbage. But one of the people behind that movie is now saying that she's unable to do her podcast because she's working on her ballot drop surveillance project in Wisconsin. Let's take a look.
We are looking at all the drop boxes across the state and trying to get an angle on whether or not they have cameras, what the setup is, how we might best be able to deploy strategically, and making sure that we have a good game plan put together. But what that means is I find myself halfway across the state and really not in a position to do the podcast tonight, which was not supposed to happen, but nonetheless, we are where we are.
Oh, no, the podcast, Ron, the podcast.
Here we go again, these grifters and scammers. That's Catherine Engelbrecht who runs True the Vote with her husband, and they are the ones who came up with these preposterous claims regarding drop boxes in the 2020 election, that there was all these ballots being dropped off in the middle of the night by Democratic operatives into these drop boxes, etc. And that was their work, their report that they generated, which Trump world latched on to, one of their conspiracies. Trump was all over it. Dinesh turned it into a movie. And remember, that was the 2000 Mules. And Trump even hosted the movie premiere at Bedminster and invited all the MAGA celebrities to come and watch it and told everybody to watch it. It was like one of the only movies that Dinesh D'Souza made a lot of money on, because most of his movies in the past always lost money because of Trump pushing this, because it fed his conspiracy narrative. Then fast forward to 2022, and these same yahoos decided to send people out to watch drop boxes in Arizona. Remember, they were showing up. Some of them had guns, and they got in a lot of trouble. They got in hot water because the feds came in and said, "Look, you're intimidating voters here, and that's a federal crime,
which is voter suppression."
Yeah. But their whole thing was that they were going to watch these drop boxes day and night, and they were going to catch these people stuffing ballots, which they didn't catch anybody. So here we are. Here she is again in Wisconsin, where she's scoping out these drop boxes and where they're at and what the locations are. The video went on longer, where she's looking to see the width of the slot, to see how many ballots can be fit into the slot at one time. She's reading the fine print on them. She's checking whether they're lighting or their cameras on them. So this is going to be mayhem. This election is going to be insane, and it's going to be people like her that are going to be stirring up problems.
Yeah, we are not going to get a result after 24 hours.
No.
You know, I think a week if you're lucky. I just want to remind people who have not lived outside the US that drop boxes for ballots are normal. It's not a special thing. It was kind of created as a special thing here for COVID. But in some countries, there are drop boxes all over town. Some countries believe that it should be a public holiday the day that you vote, but also that it should be as easy to vote as possible. And in certain towns and states, Kentucky springs to mind, they try and prevent you from voting by removing polling places and not having drop boxes and creating a conspiracy that these drop boxes are anything other than just a place to drop your ballot. And this is exactly the same storyline as they haven't been to the southern border, so therefore they don't know anything about immigration. And it's very frustrating to me because there's just not enough pushback or perspective on how the rest of the world does voting and does democracy.
Yeah. And, all I can do is continue to put out who these people are and what they're doing ahead of time, preemptively, so people can see, because I think that did happen. When I put out the clip of the guy 2 years ago with the gun sitting in a lawn chair near a drop box, that made national news, and that got the feds involved, and it got all those people out of there. So that's really what small journalistic outfits like ours has to do, is just make the public and law enforcement and the bigger media aware of what these nut jobs are doing.
Talking of nut jobs, let's jump on to Tucker Carlson's tour, which continues. The headliner is Roseanne Barr, and she has a story to tell about the elites eating babies and are vampires who drink the blood and love the taste of human flesh. Here she is.
You know they eat babies. That is not bullshit. It's true.
So it's not just the dogs and the cats, not just the pets.
It's not just the dogs and the cats. They're full-on vampires. And everybody still thinks I'm crazy, but I'm not crazy. They're full-on vampires. They love the taste of human flesh, and they drink human blood. They do. By the time we go in to vote for Trump, that he will open up everybody's eyes and they will stop pretending to be asleep. You know what they say, you can't wake people up that are pretending to be asleep, but I pray to God, please wake up even those who are pretending to be asleep with the irrefutable truth of what the worst people on this planet are really up to. They are really up to that. They're doing it. There are so many victims. There are so many victims. There's
Yeah, if that's scaring Tucker Carlson, then we should all be worried.
I mean, this is where Tucker's at right now with his career. You know, he went from CNN to, I forget, he worked for 3 networks, CNN, Fox, and another one, ABC or CBS, one of those. Fired from every one. And here he is on this tour. Last week we documented, Roseanne was on his tour the last week, and we documented how there was not hardly anybody in the arena when she was ranting and raving ridiculous stuff. And now she just went full QAnon, which I've heard her say this stuff before on Alex Jones's show, but I don't think Tucker has heard her say it. And this is the problem. I mean, when you need to book like an entertainer to be your opening act on your tour, and the only celebrity you can get is Nutty Roseanne Barr, she's gonna embarrass you and say some crazy shit. And, you know, I don't think he expected her to go here. I think he seemed a little taken aback by it, because I think what I see going on in Tucker's head is he's like, oh man, this is going to get clipped and this is going to make me look like a fool again.
Yeah.
And I've been looking like a fool a lot lately. And this is where his career is at. That's where it's at. Roseanne Barr and celebrities drinking babies' blood.
Trump has a new grift. It's the watch now that he's selling, for $100,000. I don't think this watch actually exists yet. It's a didn't he mention that there was 200 grams of gold in it? And anyway, let's take a quick look at the ad.
Special. I think you're going to love it. My new Trump watches. We're doing quite a number with watches, and the quality to me is very important. The Trump Victory Tourbillon. This isn't just any watch. It's one of the best watches made. It's a tourbillon watch with almost 200 grams of gold and more than 100 real diamonds. That's a lot of diamonds. I love gold. I love diamonds. We all do. Only 147 of these extraordinary watches will ever exist in the world, and owning one puts you in a very exclusive club. I have watch number 1, and I'm going to keep it. It's mine, and that's the way I want to have it. Each watch is numbered and extremely rare, a true collector's item, and it includes a personal letter signed by me. Get your Trump watch right now. Go to gettrumpwatches.com. It's Trump time.
Please don't go to that web address.
You know, sometimes I have people say to me, like, why do you spend so much time on all the different Trump scams and Trump grifts and Melania and all that? And I'm like, you don't understand. There is no one associated with his campaign, none of his major supporters, donors, who want this to happen. Every time Trump comes out with a new scam, whether it's crypto, NFTs, Bibles, they cringe. They go, none of them talk about it. None of them help him promote these things. None of them say, yeah, let's all go out and buy this stuff. They are pretty mortified. His supporters, I'm talking about, because they understand that, like, this stuff is not helpful. They're trying to win an election, and he's trying to make cash off running for president. So you have these two competing camps. One camp that's totally focused on winning the presidency, and Trump is there, but at the same time, Trump wants to make as much money off of this as he can while he can, knowing that this could all end soon. But the two things are not compatible because the grift hurts the election.
You know, when I was watching that infomercial, I was thinking, that's what he was put on this earth to do.
It is.
That's all he should ever have done, is sell watches in commercials on cable television.
Yep.
That's where it should have ended. Everything.
Mike Lindell. He's basically Mike Lindell.
Yeah, that's the level. Asking him about Iran, asking him about climate change. It's way above his pay grade. The guy is a watch salesman.
It's like taking the host of the Home Shopping Network and making him the president.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, listen, we have to finish, but I'm very pleased that we've had this opportunity to spend some time together as we do every Wednesday. If you'd like to download the audio podcast, you can do that tonight, and it's available wherever you get your podcasts. Please check out our sponsors down in the description, and look out for the other work that we do. Of course, I have the weekend show coming up this weekend here on the Midas Touch Network, my ongoing interview with Dr. Bandy Lee, where we will be looking at the conference that she just did, this major mental health conference on the dangerous case of Donald Trump. That's coming this Sunday night, so check that out, and we'll come back next Wednesday and do it all over again. Thanks a lot, Ron. All the best to you.
We'll see you next week.